Right, my turn now. I'm Nick Wheeler. I work for Christie. I'm head of the content management processing division for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And I am here to talk about the SDVoE installation that we did at the Zurich Opera House and the reasons why they chose that particular technology and how we implemented it. So, the Zurich Opera House is a beautiful venue, as you can see, and they are using more and more video in their productions, in their shows. And one of the productions that they were producing last summer, the artistic director actually required live camera and different content on screens that were going to be suspended in front of the balconies either side. Okay, so they were looking at different ways of doing that, you know, either suspending flat panels or LED and stuff like that, but you know, those kind of solutions were actually too heavy and too complex to implement. So the project requirements for this, so they needed something to transmit. So actually they ended up putting a boxer either side, the projector either side. And so the project requirements were 4K. They needed live camera and content on different screens, that some were portrait, some were landscape, that were suspended in front of the balconies. They needed very low latency because of the cameras, so the idea was to film the artist on stage and project them onto these different walls, onto these different screens in real time. They wanted us to use the existing fiber infrastructure that was very useful for us. It had to be reliable and easy to use, and it had to be very adaptable as well, because something that happens every day at the opera, the Zurich Opera, is that they actually rehearse one show during the day, and they will break that show down completely in a space of about an hour and a half, and they'll build a show that they actually do in the evening. So they're constantly tearing down, building up and tearing down their different shows. And also they wanted something that was scalable, because their shows change all the time on a regular basis. Okay? The existing infrastructure that they had and equipment, they already had 3 4K boxer projectors. They already had Pandora's box media servers in place, but they were using point-to-point fiber extension, and they had no distributed control. And one of the issues was actually moving the boxer projectors around between shows and getting the signals across. So the biggest challenge for them was to find the best way to get the content, you know, either side of those balconies. As I said earlier on, they looked at, you know, flat panels and LEDs and projection. You know, projection was the solution that they went with simply because of, you know, simplicity and weight. They also needed to preview the cameras and the content coming out of the media servers. They also needed to be able to control of that from a single point. And of course, they needed to sort of change everything around very, very quickly. So they need to be able to change the configuration very quickly with different output resolution from the media servers going to the boxer projectors that were actually moving around the house. So we ended up with something that looks like this. So there are 3 different zones to this. In the technical room, in the rack, they ended up with the Pandora's box media servers and the transmitters. The 2 controllers, so they have a backup controller. So the Terra controller is there to tell the transmitters and receivers what to do, and it also serves to memorize presets as well, so you can recall presets which they needed going from one show to another. The backup controller is there for redundancy, because they're tearing up and building up and tearing down the shows all the time, so that it needs to work 24/7. the backup controller is actually live, so when you save something on the main controller, it actually gets sent also to the backup controller. And in-house, okay, so there are 3 boxer projectors here with the Terra receivers, and so there are multiple points around the stage and house, and there's a HDMI 4K cable just going to each projector from the receiver, and also Ethernet as well, which gives them control. Okay, so it's a single fiber cable sending that we're using to send the video and Ethernet. Also in-house are actually the cameras that they're using to film the people on stage. Now, those are actually going to transmitters that are actually getting sent back towards the receivers in the technical room, and that are actually going into the media servers. Okay? And when you see the result, you understand why we had to feed the cameras back into the media servers so that we can project those onto the different screens. In the control room, there's a second Netgear 4300 switch. As my predecessor said, the nice thing about it is Netgear is part of the alliance, so there's no configuration to do, and it is literally plug and play. We actually never went into either of these 2 switches. So in the control room, a smaller switch is an 8x8, 2 receivers with 2 screens, 2 monitors, which they could switch between the multi-view mode, like a quad split, for example, to look at what the cameras are doing or what the source is doing, and fast switch mode, which gives them a much better view of what's actually being shown. Also, in the control room, there were PCs running the Pandora's Box Manager, the Terra Manager, and also they were using PCs to actually control the 3 projectors, the 3 boxer projectors via their web server, their internal web server. Okay? Very simple network design, and it went in really easily, actually. So from single point of control here, they can control everything that was on stage, in-house, and also in the technical room. So the implementation process, the first thing that we did was to give each transmitter and receiver 2 IP addresses. We normally use a little bit of software we call TSA to do this automatically. So the controller would actually go and auto-discover all the SDVoE devices on the network, and you could tell the controller to give each device an IP address within the range that you define. This particular installation, because they wanted different IP addresses for the transmitters and receivers, actually had to do it manually. So, but it was actually pretty easy. Next step was to put everything in the rack, connect everything up to the Netgear switch, and start the controllers and power up the transmitters and receivers, and then go to the control room. Last step, to configure the 3 what we call displays in Terra language, so the 3 destinations, the boxer projectors and the monitors, and then actually start just building presets or looks, as it were, that was stored on the controller. So 4 pretty easy steps, and the whole thing went in 1 day. It took us 1 day to do that. Very easy. So some of Terra's unique features, the controller is there, the hardware controller, what was important for them, it actually retains configurations and presets, which is very important for them, switching between shows. The backup controller for redundancy, HDMI 2.0, DisplayPort 1.2 switchable inputs, okay. The outputs from the Pandora's Box media servers was DisplayPort. The cameras will actually be converted from SDI from 1080p to HDMI and going into the HDMI inputs. And they're also using Ethernet for control of the Pandora's Box and the projectors. The result, so this is a picture of actually the control room. You can see the Terra management software here, Pandora, the Pandora Box Manager. Up here, there's a quad split of, it looks as though actually that's the cameras there. This is during rehearsal, so the cameras weren't looking at much. And the end result was that. And I've put this up here, so we're actually shooting across the balconies with a boxer projector at either side and one upstage. And you can see the different projection screens here in portrait and landscape, and they actually in real life had different content. So these are pictures taken live, and you can see, the camera, the face of the artist here up on the screen, and different content in different on different screens. So we're actually mixing, which is why the cameras actually went back into Pandora's box. We're actually mixing live camera and the content at the same time. So all in all, a very easy installation, and they're very, very happy with it as well. So it's not every day that I get a call from a customer saying thank you, but this is actually what happened 10 days after we installed this. So a very successful installation for us, very easy, and yeah, SDVoE was the ideal solution. Thank you. Any questions?